about 7 o'clock on March 6th, 2012. We're going to begin the Falls Township Board of Supervisors meeting, as we always do, with the salute to the flag, please. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Pohl, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Galloway?
Here.
Mr. Snipes?
Here.
Mr. Hart?
Here.
Mr. Dents?
Here.
Mr. Rocco?
Here.
Okay, thank you. Just remember to silence my phone. We have a pretty straightforward and very simple agenda this evening. We're going to begin. Item number 1 is consider resolution for the PCTI grant policies and procedures. Several years ago, there were some issues that were brought up between Falls and Lower Makefield, and also with Marsville Borough, regarding traffic on West Trenton. And all three communities agreed to put in some money to ask our traffic engineer, traffic planning and design, to apply for a grant from PennDOT. And the grant would allow us to look at the traffic on West Trenton and start doing a study to see if there was a way to improve it, to take a look at the light signalization everywhere from where it hits 13 all the way down to the bridge across all three municipalities. It was kind of a joint effort by all three municipalities to really try and find a solution to the traffic bottlenecks that sometimes force people to do cut-throughs of residential areas and cause some unpleasant traffic situations in some of those residential areas in Falls and Lower Make, and also Marsville. So, believe Mr. Gray, if I'm not mistaken, I think Mr. Jones is going to talk a little bit about this grant procedure.
Yes.
Okay. Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Joe Jones from T&M Associates. I work for Mr. Sullivan in the engineer's office. Yeah, the PCTI program is administered. It started by Governor Rendell in 2009, and it's a program that targets smart transportation projects for federal funding under the federal transportation bill that's known as SAFE-T. So the funding starts at the federal government level, bleeds down to the states, and is administered by Pennsylvania through the PCTI program. Okay. And that program has targeted the Trenton Avenue corridor as a study that it deems a smart transportation project and a project that has a great opportunity to provide the most benefit in terms of tax dollars spent. So in order to administer that fund and in order to select a consultant for this project, we have to follow the federal guidelines and the state guidelines, which kind of mirror the PennDOT's guidelines. And it's a ranking system and not what we would normally do, just request proposals with a cost element associated with it from 3 or 4 different firms. In this case, we have to advertise for statements of interest and set up a committee to rank those statements of interests. We'd end up with 3 on the short list, and from those 3, we'd ask for technical proposals and cost proposals. So it's a different process than we're used to, but it's a process that the state follows and that we're obligated to follow to administer the grant funds.
Okay. All right. And so looking at, as you're talking about setting up a committee, who would a committee made up of,
members of the township staff.
Okay.
What we recommend is a representative from the Board of Supervisors, a representative, the township manager, a representative from the township engineer's office, and the solicitor.
Okay.
And that would be the committee, or their designee would review the statements of interests and rank them in terms of a top 3. And from the top 3, select the best firm for the cost proposal.
Okay. All right. And so what we're looking at approving tonight, a resolution, I guess it would be 12 dash, we know what resolution number this is going to be, Mr. Gray? 8. No, 8?
It's 12-8, right?
Okay, yeah, 12-8. So basically, we're just approving the process and of beginning this procedure at this point?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Comments or questions for Mr. Jones regarding what we're doing this evening as part of the steps to start this study? Mr. Galloway?
No questions.
Mr. Snipes?
Yeah, this is a grant from PennDOT, from the state of Pennsylvania, correct?
That's correct, but it's ultimately funded by the federal government. They use federal funds.
Through the state?
Through the state.
Okay. So this is just something that we have to approve in order to be able to be eligible to do that, basically?
That's correct.
Okay. Could you quickly say some of the things that, I mean, I understand this is kind of the procedural part of it. What we're trying to get to is actual changes to what's happening on Trenton Avenue, West Trenton Avenue. What are some of the kinds of things that might come out of it that would be helpful to residents of the township?
It's hard to target. The whole purpose of the study is to target certain things, but some things that could come from it would be intersection improvements on those signalized intersections, some timing changes that would help the congestion. That might be one thing that comes out of it. Improved level of service at intersections and safety at intersections. There could be suggestions or targeted projects to improve sight distance, to improve safety. There could be recommendations for better pedestrian connection and bicycle connection, kind of intermodal type recommendations. And projects could come from this study, and that's the purpose of it, to come to certain projects that may be eligible for funding to make improvements to the corridor. So those are a couple. More would be better long-term planning in terms of zoning and land use. And there's a lot of haphazard access along that corridor, so they could want to partner with some businesses to help channelize the entrances to the highway or to the road, so that it helps the congestion. So those are some of the things that could come out of it.
Okay. Right, thank you. I think that's helpful. And I never talk about East Trenton Avenue. Is that from Pennsylvania Avenue to the bridge? Is that?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. I always call the whole thing West Trenton Avenue.
Yeah,
maybe we all do.
yeah, it's my fault. Yeah, I said that. That's my fault. I said that too.
Okay. And that's important. The portion of that we're talking about is from Pine Grove Road to the bridge.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Dents?
And just a comment, another problem area is in Burgess Manor down there, where cut-through traffic has always been a problem from West Trenton to wherever you're going. So hopefully we can relieve some of that, too.
The good part about being the sponsor for the project is that we can kind of shape where the study goes, so we'll have a lot of opportunities for input with the selected consultant to target certain areas, as you suggest.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Mr. Rucco?
I have none, thank you.
And I have none. Is there any public comment needed? See no hands. Okay, then, is there a motion to approve Resolution 12-8?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
All right, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Okay, next item on our agenda is we're going to do 2 and 3 together. Both involve the purchase of equipment for our Public Works Department. We'll have to take 2 separate votes, but we'll do public comment and board comment at the same time. And I see Mr. Arneo is here to talk a little bit about some of the equipment that we're looking at. Mr. Gray, do you want to hit any of the high points here?
Yes. I received a memo from Joe Arneo, Public Works Foreman, about the consideration of a purchase of a new Vermeer brush chipper. The total cost of this is $29,158. The amount budgeted in the 2012 budget is $35,000. The board is asked to consider approval of this chipper. In addition, the board may want to accept this bid contingent upon the confirmation the proposal complies with the Vermeer's state-approved contract.
And if you don't mind, Mr. Gray, also just touching again on the backhoe while I'll just do both of these at once.
Yes. We also received another memo from Joe Arneo concerning a purchase of a 2012 John Deere backhoe. Total dollar amount for the purchase is $104,501. This was a budgeted item in the amount of $110,000 in the 2012 budget. Also, the board is asked to consider approval of this item as well.
Okay, and the contingency is just on the chipper, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And is that, Mr. Clark or Ms. Gallagher, just because we're not sure if this is from the state bid list, or it's pretty sure it matches?
We just have to check out the information. Often, things will be listed as being on the CoStar's list or on the state bid list, but it may be different products, so we just need to confirm that it is.
Okay. All right. Mr. Arnett, you want to talk to us a little bit about the 2 pieces of equipment, and maybe I guess what it's replacing, or I know we have backhoes. I'm assuming we have a chipper now. and
Good evening. The chipper, since we'll do that one first, I guess. We have a 1994 chipper. It's a small 6-inch. You have to pretty much feed everything through it by hand. It's 18 years old. It's beat. I'm actually going to get $1,000 for it, and hopefully.
Unless Mr. Dell's interested in it.
yeah.
But it's outlived its life here. But the chipper, we do a lot of ditch work, a lot of greenbelt work, emergency work, trees down, stuff like that. And this chipper's pretty amazing. It just take a pretty much a whole tree in about 5 minutes. So.
Okay. Okay. And the backhoe is replacing one we already have, or it's in addition to one we?
The backhoe will be replacing one. It'll be replacing a 1982 John Deere with an open cab and back when they didn't put any cabs on the backhoes. But I have a Cat, 1996 Cat, but it's 16 years old, and that's we need that for emergency situations, snow. And at 16 years old, it's for an emergency situation, 3 in the morning to make sure it goes every time. Just getting a little leery. And with the John Deere kind of quit on us, so we were down to one machine. So the John Deere will go. The Cat backhoe will go to our Falsington yard. We have a yard in Falsington.
Right.
And then this one, the brand new one, will be on the road.
Okay. Okay. All right, so comments or questions for Mr. Arneo regarding either the backhoe or the chipper? Mr. Galloway?
No questions.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes, did you say the year that the chipper, how long has the chipper been around?
1994.
94, okay. So it's young compared to the backhoe. And so with the chipper, you said the kind of chipper we need is going to be, what size limb is it going to be able to take?
It'll be able to take like a 6-inch limb and I think we demoed last year. We demoed it was almost 12-inch, and it just self-feeds it and it just took
right
it.
through.
Takes the whole thing. It's amazing.
Yeah, the picture here shows it taking like
I saw
at least
that
a
and I was
6 or
surprised
8
because
inch, yeah.
we have a chipper at our place and it would never take something that big.
Yeah, it'll probably take like 6 to 12. Yeah, anything over 12, you probably force in on this size machine. But what we deal with is this will work well.
This will work.
Okay, thank you. Oh, one last question,
Yeah.
Mr. Gray. We did budget for this, correct?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dents?
No questions or comments.
Mr. Rocco?
I have none.
Okay. Yeah, and I know you said I guess we're turning in or trading in the chipper. What are we doing with the old backhoe? Are we trading that in too, or just?
I have a feeling it's probably going to have to go to the scrap yard.
Okay,
Drain
that's
the
fine.
oil and the gas.
Buy that, Mr. Dell?
It's currently not running at all.
Okay.
Yeah, we believe it finally froze up on us.
All right.
The problem was we had it down in Falsington to help us out down there, but in the wintertime, it's a diesel, and it's old. It doesn't have a way to plug it in to keep it warm.
Okay.
And eventually time just got to it, and it's
Okay.
kind of been sitting in place now for about 8 months.
All right. Okay. Any public comment needed? See no hands. All right. We have to take these individually and vote on them. So let's see. We're looking for a motion. Excuse me. To approve the purchase of a brush chipper in the amount of $29,158, a new Vermeer brush chipper, contingent upon approval of this particular specification from the Township solicitor. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, Mrs. Pullen, poll the board, please.
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dent?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Okay, second item is the purchase of the John Deere backhoe. This is in the amounts, this is from Plasterer, is that right? Equipment Company, in the amount of $104,501. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dent?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Arneo's staying where he is because the next item is his too. In terms of the fertilizer, Mr. Gray, you want to talk a little bit about this, and then Mr. Arneo can talk about where we're using this?
Yes. Recently, Joe Arneo, Public Works Foreman, was able to secure 3 quotes for the upcoming spring and summer 2012 fertilizing services at Township facilities. 3 quotes were secured. They are Excel Maintenance Service for $18,500, Realty Landscaping Corporation $19,780, and True Green $14,360. Of the 3, True Green was the lowest at $14,360. The board is asked to consider this quote for fertilizing services for 2012.
Okay, and it used to be, the state law used to be anything over $10,000 had to be bid. That was changed recently. It's 18.6, is that correct? 18.5. So anything over $18,500 has to be bid. Obviously, one comes in exactly at 18.5, one over, and one less than. And so since we have 3 quotes, and one of them is less than 18.5, it doesn't have to be bid. Mr. Arnett, you want to talk a bit about just what exactly, how often the fertilizer is being put down, where it's being put down, that kind of thing?
These quotes were obtained for fertilization and aeration of our athletic fields, Community Park, Mill Creek, Austin Drive, Von Hoffman, sites like that, sites where we have a lot of athletic use. 4 times a year, twice in the spring, twice in the fall, and core aeration in the fall. Some of the sites, we do some of them. We do the community park on our own, but some of the sites are just are in this bid.
Okay. All right. Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Galloway?
No questions.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes, this is a fertilization and a weed control as well?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dents?
No, no questions.
Mr. Rocco?
Yeah, how many years have we been doing this fertilization?
Let's see. Community Park's like 12 years old now.
Yeah, yeah.
It's probably about
Over 13.
8 to 10, I would think.
Okay,
8 to 10 years old.
that's all I had. Thank you.
And you said, too, just we're talking about the baseball fields, too, for Levittown Continental and Farrell's Hills?
Yes, Mill Creek, Austin Drive.
Right, okay.
Von Hoffman.
Okay. Okay, so we're doing the park and the Little League fields, too. So, any public comment needed? One hand, a motion to open public comment?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Dell?
When they're doing the core aeration, are they overseeding the property at the same time, or are they just aerating it?
Mr. Arnett?
Yes, yeah. Coration and aeration.
And you guys are happy with the, I think True Green's been doing it for forever now. Do you think the turf looks good down at Township Park? Weed-free, healthy-looking turf?
Considering the amount of use it gets, and especially the last couple of years we've had in terms of weather, I'm down there quite often. My kids would play soccer down there a lot.
It's green.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's, even with the traffic, I'm not that impressed with the work that's being done down there. I mean, there's I would say probably more than 50% weed versus grass down there. So whatever they're spraying for the weeds, either their timing's off or it's not the right mixture in the tank. But, it's something, something else on Joe to do. But, someone should look at it halfway through the year and say, listen, the weeds you sprayed for, they're still here.
Okay.
So if they're doing a granular pellet or if they're doing a liquid application, I don't know. But they should be getting, after 10 years, it shouldn't look like a golf course, but close.
Right.
It should look pretty healthy, thick, and even the soccer fields I can understand.
Right.
But the perimeter grass and the grass in between, you would think would be a lot healthier looking. And I just don't think after 10 years of chemicals and aeration and seed, and it should look better. So you may want to consider a higher bid if you don't have to take the lowest bid. Just a thought.
No, and I think it's for a comment. I think certainly we can ask, maybe this year we can, have Mr. Gillis pay extra attention to what's going on, I guess specifically at the park. And if he's seeing, like Mr. Dell says, partway through the year, that, it doesn't seem to be working, then we need to let True Green know that, they need to do a little bit better job in the fall when they come around, otherwise they're not going to be here anymore. So I think that's kind of where I would approach it, unless board members want to, any of the comments or questions.
They all been down to the park, and, most people don't stare at the grass, but when you're,
Right.
if it's part of your job, you notice,
Right.
notice that stuff, but I've always noticed it very weedy. It's always green, unless we have a drought, but it just doesn't seem to ever be what I would call a healthy-looking turf. You know, and again, on the athletic fields, I could truly understand that, but the 50% of the other acreage just doesn't look that good, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
fertilizing can only do so much. Also, you have to have some soil health, some healthy soil. And we all know that in the community park and maybe some other places, the soil hasn't been the best given what the condition was, the land originally when Township acquired it and began to rebuild. I know we're going to be doing some rebuilding of the field, so I would think that as we rebuild with new topsoil, that the health of what grows is going to be better. I mean, the tougher the soil is, the more the weeds are the weeds are the first thing that are going to adapt well to that. The grass wants really good soil. So I'm thinking that as we rebuild the fields, the soil will be better and the grass will look better. So I think it's not just a case of fertilizing and weed control, but it's also having healthy soil. So hopefully we'll see an improvement, but you know, honestly, there are always going to be some weeds. There's not much you can do about that.
Yeah, we're hoping that well, as we start redoing the fields, like this year, fields 3 and 5 are getting done, and this quote's $2,000 less because I had them take it out because I don't know when we're getting started and stuff like that. There's no sense of fertilizing it if we're going to tear it up.
Right.
But the soil down there isn't good. If you go to the other sites that they do, Faltington Park, Bonhoffman, even Austin Drive, some of those sites really look good. So soil's a little tough, especially in the common areas. Some of them are real good close to the pavilions, but as you wander out a little bit,
Yeah.
the soil was never river's edge soil that was put down there.
Right.
But and we didn't start doing all the fertilizing outside of the fields until probably about 5 years ago. We started doing the common areas too. At the first couple of years, we just did the fields themselves.
Okay.
So, but I know what Mr. Dell's saying. It does tend to look sometimes not great, but the soil down there isn't good.
Okay. Yeah. Both all very good points. Okay. All very good points. Any other comments from public? See one more. All right.
Rob Foreman from Falls Township. Are they putting any lime or gypsum in the dog park area? Because it's really getting acidic,
Okay.
you know.
Don't know if that was included in this or not. Do you know, Mr.
It's not
Ryan?
in this. If it's, I was wondering if we do it or.
In terms of daily maintenance, routine maintenance, do we do that? Or?
I don't believe we do, but I mean, that's something for like the dog park. I think we could apply something like that.
Yeah.
If that needs it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could have the
Okay.
Camelon guy give me come out and take a look at it for me and tell me how much I need, and
Right.
I think we could do something like that on our own.
Sure. Yeah, that's a very good suggestion. Yeah, because it's been a couple of years, obviously, and a lot of acidity being put into that soil.
Yeah, and it gets beat up. It gets beat up pretty well. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of bare patches, and the dogs just tear it up.
Sure. Okay. All right. No, that's a good point, too. Thank you very much for bringing that up. Any other public comment? Some good comments here. Yeah. Okay. Is there a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So board members have the sheet in front of them, the memo from Mr. Arneo, and the 3 quotes from the 3 companies here, as well as his recommendation. Is there a motion at this time?
I'll make a motion to approve the spring-summer 2012 lawn care contract with True Green in the amount of $14,360.
Second.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dent?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Arneo.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good night.
2, thank you. Next item on our agenda is consider engineering proposal from T&M for the Penn's Grant tennis courts. Mr. Gray?
Yes, the township received a letter from Jim Sullivan at T&M on March 1st regarding a proposal for engineering services for the Penn's Grant tennis court renovations. This would consist of 2 tennis courts at the small community park on Penn's Grant Drive. Total dollar amount of this engineering proposal is $26,200. The board is asked to consider this proposal from T&M.
Okay. All right, Mr. Sullivan, want to add anything to this or talk a bit more about it?
Proposal is for engineering bid documents and construction observation administration services for replacement of the 2 tennis courts in Penn's Grant. The tennis courts will be completely removed, fences taken down, and we will have them rebuilt to a much better condition than they are now.
Okay. Do we have any, no, well, I'll let somebody else. We'll go with board comments or questions first. Maybe somebody will ask that. Mr. Galloway, comments or questions?
Not at this time.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The courts were originally built by the township, or were they built by the developer, or I don't remember, but they are owned by the township, we assume. And we also had put this, the full cost of reconstructing them is going to be $120,000, is that?
Plus engineering, I think we put 150,000 into
So
the
that's in the
2012
budget as well. Okay. I have never actually played on the courts. I don't know when they're open, or
They're not.
is it
I
just
think they're
kind of show, there's no registration for it, you just show up when
Show
there's a
up. Just
free
open
court and
courts.
display? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dents?
No, I was going to ask the same questions Mr. Snipes just asked.
Okay. Mr. Rocco?
Does it include a new fence as well?
Yes.
And do we have any problems with the kids hanging out there? And what is there nets down there now? Is it
There's
playable?
no nets, and it's locked at all times, as far as I know.
Oh, got it.
It's in bad shape right now.
It's pretty bad shape.
Is there parking available
On the street.
on the street?
Just on the street, right?
Yeah, we did make the decision to shut them down a couple of years ago because it was getting bad, and it was the concern about injury, people going out there and playing and getting injured because the surfaces were so bad. I forget
Mr.
when.
Arnett can probably comment on how bad they are.
Forget when that was done.
Last year.
Was it last year? That was before that. Okay. But yeah, they've been sort of, I don't know when they were constructed or anything else. I don't know if you know when they were constructed or not, or Mr. Arnett.
I've been here since '83, and Penn's Grant was built right around that time, so it was around that time when the homes were built. So
Okay. And was anything ever done to them, as far as you know? Just
we've sealed the cracks and painted it, replaced the nets, stuff like that, repaired the fence.
Yeah.
But it
Nothing.
last year it just got too bad. The cracks were too wide to do anything with, and it just got out of hand.
Right.
So we decided to close it
okay.
before somebody got hurt.
Right. Any other comments or questions? I
No.
didn't mean to cut you off. I'm
No,
sorry.
That's
Mr.
it.
Chairman,
Thank you.
and we know that, do we feel that the courts were pretty well used when they were in good condition?
Yeah, they're well used, those courts. There was I think a club actually used them
Okay.
on Saturday mornings.
Yeah, there was residents use it, and I believe there was some kind of a class going on there
Right.
too. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other
These are actually the only courts in Falls Township as well, right? Besides the school.
Except for the school, I
Yeah.
believe so, yeah.
Besides the high school, right?
Yeah.
It's just amazing how many residents don't know they exist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, they will now.
Yes.
So, any other comments or questions from Mr. Arnett?
No.
Or from Mr. Sullivan? No. Okay, any public comment? See no hands? Okay, so in the engineering, Mr. Sullivan, this is basically the engineering, sorry. Mr. Sullivan, this is the engineering for the entire project?
Yes, it is.
Correct? Okay.
That's correct.
All right, so this is from beginning to end, soup to nuts here.
Soup to nuts.
So we have the proposal, lump sum, amount not to exceed $26,200 for the engineering, professional engineering services for the Penn's Grant Tennis Court renovations. Is there a motion?
So moved?
I'll second the motion.
Motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to public comment. We have one name on the list, Mr. Rowan Kenny. Speed baseball season.
Roland Kenny, Falls Township. First of all, Oreo cookies, 100 years old today. And tomorrow, you can't text and drive. It's against the law tomorrow in Pennsylvania.
Just tomorrow or starting tomorrow?
Starts tomorrow. I'm going to address this one to you, Mr. Chairman, and Jonathan. A couple of years ago, I was complaining about the Pathmark, old Pathmark building. So I went out and got a guy from Texas to come up with a deal to put a storage center in there. And he came. He came the first time. You turned him down because Dorothy didn't want him in there. Then I told you, don't turn him down no more, or he's going to pick up his steam shovel and go down and fill the one in Philly. Somehow she talked the board into not accepting the second time. Then when they accepted the third time, he had a steam shovel down there doing that one, and somehow this one just blew by the night. Now, we made him, he's going to put another drive-through in the middle. He's going to put a walkway all the way around to the bank, trees all along that walkway, and clean that building up. Now we either got the flower shop to buy it or the owner of the shopping center. And it's starting to look like a junk shop. I mean, he tries to keep it neat, but I thought he was waiting. He gets tractor after tractor after tractor and trailer in there of skids of stuff. And he put them around the side. Now he got them all in the back. It's almost out to the road. And I can see rodents. I can just think of rodents coming in there. And we're just right across the street. To look at that every day as you leave is an eyesore. I thought when he put the roof on, he put that on a couple months ago. Once he put the roof on, he'd take them pallets and stick them inside, because I know I could get them all in there. It's starting to look shabby again. I don't know what we can do, but there's got to be something we can do with that, about it. I don't want to be a complainer all the time, but,
Close your blinds.
Yeah, well, I don't see it down on my blinds. When I drive out, I see that crap. And I don't think you would want to see all them pallets across the street from where you live.
Yeah.
And we don't either.
Well, I agree with you, and I'll ask Mr. Gray to have code enforcement just take a look and see if they're violating, because you're right, that a lot of pallets are starting to pile up. And I do notice when I'm driving there, we're driving to Path Marguerite or something, or kids hanging out around the back. Now that being said, my recollection of the events is a little different than yours. I do know that the first time the storage center came here, I think it was actually tabled. I believe I actually missed that meeting.
Tabled.
Because my father had passed, so I wasn't at that meeting, so I believe it was tabled. And I believe the meeting after that, it was approved. But they eventually did get approvals, and they decided to back out largely because they were from California, I think. I don't think they're from Texas.
Texas.
I remember talking to somebody who was in California, so.
Two big
I do know they backed out.
I know they backed out.
At some point because of, I think, pretty much when the economy started going down the hill.
I knew they would back out once they moved down the city and built that one. They built that one and left us hanging.
Now, I have talked just actually about a month and a half ago, talked to the owner of that shopping center, just to ask him, and I usually talk to him a couple times a year, just if I see him, just asking him about what's going on, what's happening with it. And he is very close to finalizing, I think, some deals for that, where he has found some people who are interested in taking it. I believe actually that flower shop is going to take about half of that building, and so they're going to move a lot of their operation inside. I think most of the pallets you see are from the fertilizers and grass seed and everything else that they have. And I believe he's found a couple other tenants for the rest of the building. So I believe within the next few months, you're going to see a lot more work going on there. Just, and this is sort of the most positive that he's been when I've talked to him in a while.
Be patient.
Yeah. So that's, those are the update I can give you, and it's obviously not a real detailed update. He doesn't have to tell me what he's doing, but I do know that he's definitely making some progress on it.
Okay.
But in terms of the code issues, definitely we can send our inspectors out to see if there are rodents and things like that, then that's obviously something they're going to have
I'm
to deal
just
with.
afraid it's going to happen.
Sure.
You got 82 homes across the street, and we take pride in our property.
Mm-hmm.
And if you notice, we put up a few trees.
Yep.
We're putting up a fence along Pennsylvania Avenue, and we're trying to keep everything neat and the neighbors happy.
Taking down trees.
Well, I won't take another tree down. They're all yours. They fall down, they're on you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kenny. Those are all the names on the list. Anyone else? Mr. Dell?
Couple questions. I noticed we have 2 solicitors here now. I've missed a couple meetings. I was just curious why we have 2 solicitors.
Ms. Gallagher works for Mr. Clark's firm and is relatively new to the firm, and she's been doing a lot of work in the township, actually at a lower rate than Mr. Clark usually does. And so and she's sometimes better than he is at some things. So
Brought it up.
I was just curious because
So-
I guess it's been, what, maybe 3 meetings now or 4 meetings now? I really
Probably
don't
longer
even
than
know.
that.
yeah,
Since
she's
been sitting there.
She's
She used to
and a
sit
lot
out
of times
there.
she sat in the back.
Oh, okay.
Been about a,
But
probably about a year I've been coming.
about a year or so, yeah.
Okay. I just didn't know if there was any reason for
I think she's just
just learning the job.
a little bit of that, yeah, a little bit of that, and
Okay.
also she does a lot of work on some of the things that are going on in the township.
The other question I have is Falls Township considered the municipality a nonprofit organization, or how is it categorized from a tax perspective?
We're a municipality, so we're not taxed at all.
Not taxed at all, but I mean, as
We're
far
a
as
government entity, so you're not.
as far as making money, are you guys allowed to make money?
We're not allowed to do things for profit. We can't sort of charge for profit. Mr. Clark, I don't know if you want to comment on what we're allowed to do and not allowed to do in terms of actually making money.
That's correct.
Make sure you use your microphone, Mr. Clark.
All revenue that we generate is supposed to cover expenditures. If there is a surplus during any particular year, that is fine, but we're not supposed to do anything with an eye towards making a profit. Permits are a prime example where we are supposed to be covering our costs and the costs of operating the department. It's not supposed to be for turning a profit. The issuance of code violations is not supposed to be for turning a profit. It's to be to cover the costs and the costs of the code department.
Okay, that runs me into my next question, is when someone asks for a permit, say it's a business permit, and it's a substantial amount of money, $30,000, $40,000, and your costs on that job are $3,000, how do you account for the other $37,000?
If it's a $30,000 building or a business
No,
permit.
like a $40,000 like you guys charge $40,000 for the permit, you spend $3,000 sending Tom Bennett and code enforcement out there,
Well,
and the rest of the money is what?
Well, as I've said, started to say, if it's a $30,000 or $40,000 business permit, it probably is not, a florist shop or a dog grooming parlor. It's probably a large facility, which requires a lot of review. It's not just the people when they leave this building and go, look, it covers everything that happens in this building, every meeting Tom Bennett has to go to, every meeting Rich DiPolito has to go to, every plan he has to look at, every phone call he has to take, every email he takes a look at. It is based on the size and scope of the project. Large projects obviously require a whole lot more effort and a whole lot more involvement by not just Mr. Bennett and the code enforcement, but by everybody, including in some cases, or a lot of cases, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Clark, and their fees are supposed to be covered by escrow. That doesn't always
Well,
happen.
that's what I was going to ask you. I thought their
Mr.
fees
Gray's
were-
time as well.
Yes. But don't you find when you charge for these permits based off of the cost structure of the business itself, and you guys take a percentage of the job, don't you find that you're left with a substantial amount of money left over? Has anyone ever looked at
No,
how much
because-
money you actually spent?
No,
on
because
payroll?
normally, general fund has to reimburse the code enforcement department because we usually run short every year. Mr. Gray, am I correct on that?
Yes. Yeah, we've had, this past year was very bad. So we've had, our fees were down. I'm sorry, our revenues were down, and our fees were continuing to go up, so we have to cover those costs.
Looking at our fees as we approved them compared to the other municipalities in our region, we were very competitive. We were on the low to middle end.
And we also have third-party inspectors that we also have
Right.
doing reviews as well.
Right. There's certain inspections that are done, and our staff here in the township building doesn't have these certifications. For example, electrical. I don't think we have anybody who has electrical. Is that correct?
That's
correct. We have to do a third party for electrical inspections, and so that's somebody we have to pay to do that work.
And general construction too, right? Do you have outside parties for that, or do you guys cover
Yes.
that?
Yeah, I believe so, right? Yeah. Yeah, there's dozens of certifications, so I'm not off the top of my head, I don't know, couldn't tell you which ones our inspectors have and don't, but, you know, the bigger one, I know electrical is one we
I
have
mean,
to
do you
go
find that
after.
you guys are losing money on the smaller jobs and making more on the bigger ones, it all sort of evens out, or are you losing money across the board?
I couldn't tell you, Mr. Gray, I don't know if you can tell off the top of my head.
have no idea.
If we've done a study like that in
We'd have
terms
to look into
of
that.
Okay.
project by project.
All right, thank
Okay?
you.
Thank you.
Mr. Harvey, if I could,
Yeah.
I don't want anyone watching this meeting to get the wrong impression. Mr. Dell several times he started off by asking a question about turning a profit and whether or not we're a nonprofit. Then he moved into these permit fees and then said, you're making money on these fees, as if somebody who comes in and spends $40,000, and I don't know where Mr. Dell comes up with idea of, well, and a random number is, it only costs you $3,000 on that job. We're not in the business of turning a profit on these, but it's not as if our department, it cannot be looked at for each individual job. It has to be looked at as the department as a whole. And as Mr. Gray can tell you, that the fees that we collect do not maintain the entire code department and do not maintain the entire inspection department. That department needs to be supplemented by the general fund. As a municipal entity, we are not required to have each job be a dollar for dollar that is spent on it. It has to be looked at in its entirety with the department. And also, just so there's no confusion, as has been the policy of this board since I began here in 2002, when Ms. Gallagher and I are sitting here together, or when Mr. Rudolph and I sat here together, the township is only being charged for one attorney sitting at the meetings. Ms. Gallagher does a fair amount of work in the township. It's not on-the-job training. There are a lot of issues that she deals with, but while we are here, we are only billing the township for one attorney sitting at these meetings, and that has been the policy since the very first meeting we did back in January of 2002.
Okay, thank you. And I think Mr. Galloway brought up an excellent point, you know, with the comparison we did with other municipalities, and when we were looking at raising our fees a couple meetings ago, was really designed, still, even after raising, we were sort of in the middle of the pack. We certainly weren't the most expensive. Other public comment? See no with hands? Okay. All right. We have, next on our agenda are the minutes. We have two sets of minutes. From February 7th and February 21st. We can take comments and questions on each of these. We can approve them together. I don't think we don't need two separate motions. No, I didn't think so. Okay, comments and questions on, let's take the minutes of February 7th. Any comments or questions on those from anybody?
No.
None.
No.
No? Okay, how about the 21st? Comments or questions?
No.
None.
Okay. All right then, is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented for February 7th and February 21st, 2012?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, executive session, we did not have a need for an executive session. Manager comment, Mr. Gray?
Yes, just a few items tonight. First item, I received a letter from Tom Hecker dated February 27th regarding the land development application for Viking Associates. He's requesting an extension on this project until June 30th, 2012. The board is asked to consider this extension.
Okay. All right, comments or questions from board members?
No.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the extension to, excuse me, to June 30th, 2012? For, okay,
For land development, for Viking Associates.
correct.
Seconded.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
My next item is, we received a letter from Jim Sullivan dated February 22nd regarding escrow release number 4 for AE Polysilicon. The escrow release amount is $301,619.79. The board is asked to consider a release of this escrow amount.
Okay, 301, 619, 79?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, comments or questions from board members regarding the escrow release?
No.
The letter I have in front of me is a different number.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
so. The letter I have is 175,602.41.
Yes, there was a subsequent letter from T&M for 301-619-79.
Okay.
The letter you have is from AE Polysilicon. They sent in a second letter dated, Mr. Gray. What was the second letter date?
The first was dated February 14th, and the second one was dated February 15th. There's a subsequent letter from T&M's office
All right.
for 301-619.79.
So
Yeah,
that
the
include-
project is basically 100% complete, so we told them to ask for everything, and we're releasing everything but 10% to allow for a maintenance period.
Okay. So that the 301,619 includes the 175,000?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right. Okay, so any other comments or questions?
No.
No, the project is complete, and we can release most of their money to them. All right, is there a motion then to release the escrow amount, $301,619.79?
So moved.
Seconded?
Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Vaca?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey, if I can jump in for a moment. We have an item that was not originally listed on the agenda due to the fact that only within the last couple of days have we been able to work out some of the final details. We have been in discussions with a company called Green Resource Energy LLC. Several of their representatives are here this evening, along with their attorney, Dennis Langto. Green Resource is involved in the, and I will read it directly from the agreement, the processing, grinding, screening, and blending of pre-sorted post-consumer and virgin materials for beneficial use as an alternative fuel pursuant to their DEP permit. Essentially, as it has been explained to us, Mr. Harvey and members of the board, Green Resource is going to take certain materials, some that would be normally placed in a landfill, some that would head to a recycling center, and they are going to, in its simplest of terms, they are going to grind this up in a variety of mixtures to be sold as an alternative fuel to be burned along with coal and other fuel sources. Because of the fact that there are some materials involved that would normally make their way into a landfill, we began discussions with Mr. Langto regarding a host community agreement, and were able to arrive upon an agreement regarding the payment of certain fees to the township. Green Resource is currently permitted by DEP to take in 15,000 tons per day, 1,500, excuse me, and that's why Ms. Gallagher is sitting here. And no one paid for that, what she just said. And which would be approximately slightly less than 120,000 tons per quarter. Green Resources has agreed to pay the township at a rate of $10,000 per quarter for up to 120,000 tons. For each additional 30,000 tons of solid waste entering the facility per quarter, Green Resource shall pay to the township an additional $2,500 per quarter, and that will increase as their business increases. Much of the agreement is standard language that we have had in some of our other host community agreements, and much of this is controlled by the Department of Environmental Protection. As I said, we've been working with Mr. Langto for the last month or so and have just been able to reach this agreement. Mr. Langto has provided us with a copy of the agreement as executed by the principals of Green Resource Energy LLC.
Okay. All right, comments or questions for Mr. Clark regarding the proposed host community agreement? I know we've had some discussions on this over the past few weeks. Mr. Galloway, any comments or questions?
Not at this time.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes, to make sure the township and Green Resources are comfortable with I assume everyone's comfortable with the language that's being used. I know there was some question about different terms and what DEP determines is waste or not waste or recycling, and those things have been worked out to everyone's agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
And what I think it is fair to say that there might have been a difference of opinion between Green Resource and the township on certain issues. We've attempted to resolve those issues in a manner which will allow the township's interest to be served, but also allow Green Resources to move forward with their business. We've also made sure that the agreement contains language that essentially says everyone is coming to the table, and whether our differences were or whether our disagreements over terms were, that we're agreeing that this agreement will go into place and the fees will be owed to the township, and this agreement will be enforceable by the township.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dents?
You said it's $10,000 per quarter based on a weight of volume?
Tonnage.
Okay, and who keeps track of the tonnage that's being dumped or recycled?
Everything that they bring in, just as with the other facility that's in the township, all of their records, all of their invoices have to be kept by DEP. They have a certain amount that they're permitted by DEP. That all has to be tracked. Part of the agreement is that we're entitled to, I believe, a yearly audit to determine how much they've actually been bringing in. So, and I will tell you that Green Resources, as all industries in Pennsylvania that deal with solid waste, will have much larger issues with DEP if they exceed their allotted tonnage than they will actually with us. So that's, the DEP is kind of the policeman on this.
Thank you, that's all I had.
Mr. Rocco?
What is the duration of this agreement?
This is into perpetuity as long as Green Resource Energy is in existence.
Okay. Would we be better off having a 5-year agreement in place, or like we do with some of the other?
Well,
or what was the reasoning, that, in your opinion?
The thought process here, it relates to the type of business that they are involved in, and we thought that it was in the best interest of the parties not to have this agreement being revisited without the express consent of both sides. So there may be a possibility, based on circumstances, based on the expansion of their business, based on the moving into a different facility, that we may be able to revisit this agreement. But based on certain issues, we thought it best to leave this as a continuing agreement.
Okay, anybody else on the board have an opinion on that?
Well, it also, it follows the agreements we have with Waste Management are not time sensitive. It's as long as the facility is open, then.
Yeah, but they're governed by the amount of trash they can put in, right?
Well, they are too. These guys are too. They're governed based on the amount they can bring into their facility. They can't bring over a certain amount. And as, you know, it's one thing Mr. Clark is saying. If they go over that certain amount, they're going to have to pay us a little bit more money. They're going to have to pay a whole lot of money to DEP. So, you know, the bigger worry, the hammer that's going to fall on them is small from us. It's bigger from DEP.
But I also, if I'm not mistaken, I think Mr. Rocco may be asking another question. At some point, Waste Management is going to put in its last ton of trash because they have a limited amount of space. Based on this business, presumably Green Resource Energy could go for the next 100 years because they're not filling anything up. What they grind up and turn into this alternative fuel is then moved to another facility and then eventually sold. So I don't know if that was the point that Mr. Rocco was getting at, but
it was. Thank you.
But the agreements with Waste Management are based on a particular facility,
right?
And that's why this agreement, if there's an expansion, if there's a moving into a different facility, then it can be revisited. But as far as the permitting that's permitted by DEP, then we felt it in the best interest to keep it this way.
And basically, as long as it remains at or below 1,500 tons a month, right?
Correct. Correct. 1,500 tons a day.
A day.
Yeah.
Other concerns, Mr. Rocco? I mean,
No, I just feel like there should be a time constraint for the contract, so.
okay.
Right. It's, the time period is related to their DEP permit.
How long is their DEP permit?
I'm looking for it right now.
We're looking for it now.
Okay.
July 5th, 2016, the DEP permit expires.
There you go.
So they have a 4-year permit.
Right. So is it in our best interest to have our contract match that?
That's the language in there.
Oh.
If the DEP permit is renewed and, so, yeah.
We renew.
If it's renewed at the 1,500, it would stay the same.
Okay.
So in a way, there actually is a date.
There is a date, but there isn't room for contract negotiations on either side. It automatically renews if the DEP contract renews.
At the same
At the
levels.
same, yeah.
Because we're not even entitled.
Jeff, could
Are
you
you-
say a little bit more what's your key
An
concern?
escalator clause, I guess, basically, after, you know.
Yeah.
You just want to have the ability to renegotiate
Right.
at a certain point.
Yes.
It says in our contract there that it would automatically renew if their DEP contract renews, or permit?
The exact language says, "The term of this agreement shall commence upon the date it has been executed by all parties, and shall continue through the final closure of the facilities pursuant to the permits issued by DEP, as may be modified or renewed, or through all operations cease at the facility, whichever event occurs last."
So if the facility continues to operate at 1,500 tons a day, the contract stays as is, essentially. Is that what you're saying, is that what the contract says, basically?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, it's good, Mr. Rocco brings up, a good point. I understand where he's going. And I appreciate him asking the question, because that was something I hadn't thought of.
Yeah.
But is that something the board is interested in looking
Can I
at?
ask for a brief executive session?
Sure, that's fine. We'll take a short recess.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the board held an executive session a few moments ago to discuss a matter of potential litigation. Also, if I could clarify my comments from earlier regarding the agreement, we believe that the agreement, as it is tied to their current to Green Resources' current DEP permit, tied to their location at the what is known as Tin 2 building, and it is tied to the tonnage with DEP, that there can be certain change in circumstances that would allow the township and Green Resources to revisit this agreement at some future date. But as of now, it is tied to their DEP permit.
Okay. All right, thank you. Other comments or questions from board members?
No.
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 Okay. All right. Is there any public comment? On hands or motion to open public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Mr. Dell?
New business in Falls Township comes here, wants to do business. How does the township consider this place, as what I understand from what I heard tonight, a dump or a waste facility, when it's a recycling facility, and the material isn't being stored like waste management, where you have a mountain at the end of your 30 years, you have a mountain of trash to look at.
It's not being recycled, though.
It's a recycling facility.
No,
It's being burned. It's not a recycling facility.
What's that?
It's being burned. It's being sold to people that then burn it. So it's
But they're
really.
not burning it. The people who
But
they
it's
sell their product to are burning
But
this
they're
product.
having waste vehicles come in and dump trash, essentially, and then that
Is it
trash
tr-
is, yes, and then that trash is sorted, and then it's, sold off based on different mixtures to different, people that burn it with different materials, as Mr. Clark described. In that sense, it really is no different than the wheelabrator facility that brings trash in, dumps it in, and then burns it. It's really not much of a difference, and that's kind of the way it's being looked at.
Has this been done for any other recycling? I mean, is this something that's common practice to do to recyclers?
It's not a recycling facility, Mr. Dell. You're using improper
Well,
terms.
the terminology I'm using
It is
is-
it is not a recycling facility.
You're taking a product and crushing it down into a smaller product, and
No,
it's not ending up in a...
recycling means you are taking 1,000 of these.
Yes.
And you are making 800 of these.
Okay.
They are taking 1,000 of these, grinding them up, and then selling them to someone who is going to burn them. That's not recycling.
They're creating revenue by making a product. Let's put it that way. They're recycling something that would normally ended up in a landfill, and we're reusing it for energy. I don't see a problem with that. I don't think anyone should be penalized for that. I don't see how us as a township can charge a company coming in here quarterly, weekly, daily, or whatever for their product. Who are we to take money from? I don't care what the business is. Waste management, I understand, it's a totally different story. You have solid waste. It's a finite job, and we have to end up looking at the end of the day at a giant landscape of trash covered by grass and dirt. Understandable, but this is not going to be a pile of trash. This is going to come in, get ground up, and get shipped out. And it's a business, and they're bringing jobs to Falls Township, and they're doing, I think, a service by limiting the amount of trash, which I'm sure Waste Management's not happy about, but it's, they're taking something that would have normally ended up getting tossed, and they're crushing it down to size, and it's being used as a fuel. I just don't know, is this a common practice for a facility like this to have to pay a township a source of their income? Are we the first ones to do this?
I don't know for the first
Does anyone
ones
else
to
do this to recycle?
I don't know.
Sorry, don't want to keep calling them recyclers, but in my mind, they're recycling a product and they're turning it into something, and it's being used as fuel, as opposed to coal or gas or in conjunction with some other fossil fuel. It's being used as a fuel, and I just have a real problem with us taking money from whatever business might be, wherever the business might be located. That's their money. That's not the Falls Township's money. We have no entitlement to that money. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Waste management, we've always had tipping fees. It's solid waste. It goes nowhere until somewhere in the future where maybe they'll end up digging it back up and doing something with it. Who knows? But as far as technology goes today, we have to dump it. But they're taking a specific item of trash, and I'm sure if there's refuse left over, which is trash, it gets sent back probably in dumpsters to Waste Management, because what else are they going to do with something they can't chop up and recycle? So whatever they take in, they're getting rid of as a product. And, Mount Recycling recycles concrete. That used to end up in a landfill. I'm sure Barrett Asphalt recycles their asphalt. That used to end up getting dumped places. I mean, you see little piles of asphalt all over the place. 20, 30 years ago, people had too much asphalt in their truck, or when they dug up, they just dumped it in the woods. All these places are doing something good, and they're creating jobs, and they're doing something what I would consider more green than dumping it into the ground. And I just feel it's unfair to charge any business, regardless of how big or small their checkbook is. I don't believe that Falls Township's entitled to that money.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Well, the law would disagree with Mr. Dell, because the Pennsylvania statutes say there is imposed a host municipality benefit fee upon the operator of each municipal waste landfill or resource recovery facility that has a valid permit on the effective date of this act. And this is a resource recovery facility, and we are entitled to impose a host municipality benefit fee upon the operator of a resource recovery facility. And those were the discussions with Mr. Langto, and that is why they have executed this agreement.
Okay.
All right, I agree to disagree. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we've heard, we've had a good amount of discussion on the host community agreement with Green Resources. Is there a motion to execute the agreement as presented to us by Mr. Clark?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right. Mr. Gray, anything else from random comment?
Yes, just a few announcements from the Park and Rec Department. The Park and Rec Department continues to accept registrations for the summer camp program. They're also accepting Pinewood Pool membership applications. Please note, April 1st is the deadline for early bird discounts. Park and Rec is also looking and accepting employment applications for the Pinewood Pool lifeguard positions. The annual March Madness foul shooting contest will be held Tuesday, March 20th at Quarry Hill Elementary School at 7 p.m. This is an event that was originally scheduled at the Oxford Valley School. This is an event for children ages 8 to 17 years old. The annual Easter egg hunt will be held on Saturday, March 24th at the Falls Township Community Park, Phase 1 Pavilion, starting at 1 p.m. There will be a visit from the Easter Bunny and Otto the Clown. The annual breakfast with the Bunny will be scheduled on Saturday, March 31st. This will be held on the grounds of Three Arches from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. There will be a breakfast, arts and crafts, a DJ, children's games, Otto the Clown, and much more. And finally, AE polysilicon Mylars are available for signature. That's all I have tonight.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to go to board comment at this time. I believe Mr. Galloway has an issue he'd like to bring up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to remind everyone in the township that this coming Saturday, March the 10th, is the 24th annual Bucks County St. Patrick's Day Parade, which steps off at 10:30 a.m. from St. Joe's. Our Grand Marshal this year is Lieutenant Governor James Cawley. It's a wonderful time for all. It's possibly the most well-attended community event in the whole county. So I'd like to remind everyone in the township to come out and view the parade. Between about 10:30, we should get up to the grandstand at about 1 o'clock on Saturday. Also, what we produced here, Mr. Gray has produced for me. I'd like to bring it before the board. It's a proclamation I'd like to introduce.
Very well.
I'd like to read the last paragraph of the proclamation. It says, "Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of the Township of Falls does hereby issue this proclamation that the month of March 2012 shall be known as Irish American History Month. The Falls Township Board of Supervisors calls upon all of its township residents to observe this month by celebrating the contributions of Irish Americans in our community, in our state, and across our country." And I don't know the wording, but I'd like to ask all the supervisors to vote on the proclamation.
Okay, motion is made to approve the proclamation.
Second the motion.
Second motion. Good for you, Mr. Dents. You're not even Irish. That's good for you.
Everybody's Irish in March now, right?
Yeah, well, I guess
Right.
so.
You don't have to be Irish to come to the parade either, right?
Right, that's right.
No, you do not have to be Irish.
Yeah, Mr. Rocco is more Irish than I am.
So, well, nobody's perfect. You know,
Well, I'd tell you the vice president of the committee is a Kurdisco,
Oh, okay.
with no Irish in their background at all.
All right, so we have a motion and a second for the proclamation. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, very good. Okay, anything else, Mr. Galloway?
No, that would be all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Snipes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just a couple of activities coming up being sponsored by Historic Fallsington. One is a spring lecture and program. This one is a really yummy one. This is the history of chocolate in Pennsylvania. And this is going to be presented by a wonderful woman named Susan McClellan Plaisted, who's an excellent chef and also a food historian. She will, it says here, the aroma of chocolate will waft in the air as she connects the cultural use of chocolate from Mesoamerica to Europe and back to colonial America and Pennsylvania. So the history of chocolate, that's going to be presented at the Quaker Meeting House in Fallsington, 7:30 on Thursday, March 8th this week. You'll learn the basics and also have an opportunity to sample some of the chocolate beverage she'll be making. And they ask you to make a reservation with Historic Fallsington at 6567. Also coming up on May 19th, also from Historic Fallsington, there are going to be self-guided tours from noon to 4, and open hearth cooking, spinning, and other children's activities, other things. Admission is free. And then in the evening is Twilight in Fallsington, and that's from 5 to 8. And there'll be hors d'oeuvres and also behind-the-scenes tours of the Stagecoach Tavern in Fallsington, and tickets are priced at $35. So in the morning, early in the afternoon is free, and then later it's a fundraiser for Historic Fallsington. And again, you can make a reservation at 295-6567. It's a great thing for us in Falls Township to support Historic Fallsington. It's our kind of the heart of the history of Falls Township, and I hope some folks can come out and enjoy it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Dents?
I have an event as well. May 19th and 20th will be our second annual Queue for the Troops at the Township Park. It's a barbecue. There'll be a car show one day, a motorcycle show, I think on Saturday, a craft fair both days, something for everybody, the whole family, rides for the kids. Last year, it was a little rainy, the weather wasn't great, but we did raise almost $20,000, I think we gave to the Liberty USO, who benefits from the event. This event hopefully is bigger this year. Last year we had 26 professional barbecue teams. They competed for about $7,000. This year I think we're going to have a few more teams, and hopefully the weather's better this year. So we'll have more details to follow soon. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Rocco?
I have an event as well. This Friday and Saturday at 7:30 at night, the students of Pennsbury's BAME Middle School will be, including my daughter Bailey Rocco, will be performing a musical comedy called Curtains. All tickets are $10 and available at the door. That's this Friday and Saturday night at 7:30. So that's all I had.
Okay. All right. I don't have any events. I do have a couple. First off, I want to thank Mr. Kinney for reminding us, because I had forgotten about the no texting while driving law and that it was going to go into effect this week, tomorrow, we said, right? And over the years, we've had people talk to us here just out in the public. I've had people ask me, why doesn't Falls enact a law? No cell phone while driving, no texting while driving. And one of the problems I always had with it, first off, we knew that the state was working on something, but also, if every little municipality does something slightly different when it comes to driving, and obviously people drive between so many municipalities, it becomes very, very difficult for drivers even, and a nightmare for our police officers to figure out, what's going on. So I'm glad the state finally acted, no texting while driving, and it also covers any other kind of device where you have to put any kind of, input, whether it's an iPad or some other kind of tablet that you're using while you're driving. All of those are illegal, and I believe they're actually primary offenses, so I think the police can actually pull you over if they see you doing it. It's not something I think they can do. They don't have to necessarily wait to pull you over for something else. Obviously it just makes a whole lot of sense. You may think you're the best driver in the world, but there's a limit to everybody's abilities, and you may be very good at driving, but the person in front of you may not be. And if you're texting while you're driving, thinking that you're under control, and they decide to do something reckless, you're not going to have time to react. Also wanted to sort of follow up. At the last Board of Supervisors meeting, I made some comments regarding the senior center. We've been working for many years now on, in addition to that building, to serve the needs of the people of Falls Township who use our senior center. And we've worked very hard with them, and I know they've been very impatient, and they have every right to be with the slow progress of that project. Essentially, we had done what we needed to do here at the township, and the county employees who were supposed to be reviewing the application, we'd sent them in June, didn't really start looking at it until November. And then they started to realize that there were things they didn't like the pictures we sent because it wasn't shiny enough for them or something like that. So now we have to go out and take all new pictures. However, working very closely with Commissioner Marseglia, and also with some credit to the Courier-Times, who began asking a lot of questions and making people in Doylestown very nervous, we were told just yesterday, actually, that the money for the project has been approved from the county after several months of needless delay. Would have been nice if they had told us this news in September or October, but it's good news to receive anyway. There are still a few hoops that they're going to force us to jump through, and so we're looking at a couple of months more of dotting I's and crossing T's, and hopefully at that point we'll be able to start breaking ground. But it is very good news. I want to thank Mr. Sullivan and his staff. Been working very, very hard on this, and Ms. Gallagher's been writing a lot of unpleasant letters to people in Doylestown threatening all kinds of mean things, which I think helped as well. And again, thanks very much to Commissioner Marseglia for starting to rattle some cages up in Doylestown, and again for Joan Hellier, the Courier-Times reporter, who, to her credit, started asking a lot of questions of people, and as I said, that people got very nervous, and all of a sudden things started to get approved. Good news, and we're looking forward to the project. I know the seniors are looking forward to the project, and thanks all around to the people here at the township who did their jobs and did them very well. So with that, believe we've already had the proclamation, and we've talked about the parade coming up. It's always a great event. I've been proud to have been, a part of it for the last couple of years, and Mr. Galloway has been, running the parade, and organizing it for a lot longer than I've been involved. So he deserves a lot of the credit for everything you're going to see on Saturday. It's supposed to be a sunny day, a little bit cold, but that's okay. It's sort of better than hot, I guess, if you're going to walk a couple miles on that road. But I also want to wish a very happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. Again, even if you're not Irish, you can enjoy the day and hopefully enjoy it responsibly. With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.